All right, so let's review. It's been a couple weeks. I was out sick last week. So last week we were introduced to two things where we talked about what is the job of the apologist. Remember what the job of the apologist is?
To
apologize.
No.
To give to every man an answer for the
Yes.
defend the faith once for all.
Yeah, but we said that's the big job. But within that, there are two specific things that we have to do.
To answer a fool according to his folly.
Yeah, all good stuff, but that's not what I'm talking
Well,
about.
I'm out of verse.
Well, you were not here, actually. You weren't here. You were here.
No,
You
no,
were
I
here.
was
You were here.
I was here. Yeah, I was in
You had worked late.
Yeah, you remember
That's
the last
right.
time you weren't here, so I don't
Yeah,
expect you to remember the outline. But I know you know the subject though,
I'm
because
hitting the verses though.
you are hitting the
Okay,
verses.
we do it because it's unavoidable. Is that
No,
what you're after?
no. That's the first. That was the first
I
one.
remember that. I was here for that one.
Yeah. Okay, so the two jobs of the apologist is to properly explain
the Christian worldview.
the Christian worldview, okay, against people who ask us questions or who misrepresent the Christian world. That's a huge part of apologetics. A huge part of apologetics is simply to explain correctly the Christian worldview.
Sure.
Because a lot of objections to the Christian worldview come as misrepresentations or straw mans or not understanding or what they've been taught their whole life. So they say stuff about the Trinity or, oh, you believe in Christianity, we're just going to be up floating around on clouds and, ridiculous stuff. They paint it out to be ridiculous. A big part of what it is to be an apologist is to have your theology correct and be able to explain why we believe the theology that we believe. And then the second part was to refute the non-believing systems. And as we started that out, we said that everybody has a what? A W.
Has a
Worldview.
A worldview. And what is a worldview?
A network of ideas, beliefs, and theories.
Yes, okay. It's a network of ideas, beliefs, and theories in which all facts are interpreted on that worldview. This is why it's really difficult just to throw facts at somebody, because you throw facts at them and they just reinterpret it with their worldview.
Right.
So we have a friend we talked about last time too, is Larry, and you were showing me one time a text of all the facts you were talking about to support the Bible, and that how the LDS Church doesn't have those things, and he just comes back, well, we have a living prophet. See, all the facts just went out the window because his belief underneath that gives rise to his other beliefs is that we have a living prophet in which everything else springs from. At the bottom of those worldviews, the very basic beliefs that have to justify themselves are called
Presuppositions.
right, presuppositions. And a presupposition is a belief that's kind of unquestioned, that has to verify itself. So the basic reliability of the senses and things like that. There are certain things that we just believe because we believe them. Morality, things of that nature. They're basic presuppositions. And then at the very end, and this is what you hit on, with the Proverbs, we went to Proverbs. Which verse? What does anybody remember? What chapter and verse? Proverbs 26.
It was 20-something.
26 verses 4 and 5, and it says, and you know what it says, answer a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. And that's the basic two-step of apologetic method. What's that?
What was the verse again?
26, Proverbs 26, verses 4 and 5. And by that, we said that we're going to do two things. When we're looking at the apologetics, when we're doing apologetics, what are the two things that we do as a result of that verse? What's that verse telling us to do, basically? Answer not a fool according to his folly, and answer a fool according to his folly. Mm-hmm. So I answer him according to his folly, lest he be like him in his own eyes. So I step onto his into his worldview and do an internal critique of his system. Okay, so I show that he can't be wise in his own eyes, but I don't want to follow him in that. I'm only doing that as an example to show the internal critique. I stay on the Christian worldview. And because I stay on the Christian worldview, I don't answer him according to his folly. Because I don't want to be like him. I don't want to sit there and assume things that he assumes. And we said that there is the big myth of what?
Neutrality.
Right, the big myth of neutrality. And because everybody has a worldview, and because everybody has presuppositions, and because everybody has basic beliefs beliefs about things, they're not neutral. They pretend to be neutral. They think they're neutral, but that's because they're epistemologically not self-aware. They're epistemologically unaware. Ignorant, yes. They don't know why they believe what they believe, but they all have belief systems, and they're not neutral, and they're not neutral, and you
Are not either.
you shouldn't be neutral. You shouldn't be neutral. Okay, so that's something you need to grind in your head. You need to grind that in your head. They're not neutral, and you shouldn't be neutral. Okay, they're not, and you shouldn't be. You don't want to sit there and go, well, you know what? There's this neutral ground, and if we look at this neutral ground, and then we'll reason our way back. And if you just reason right, then you'll reason your way back to God, just like I've reasoned my way back to God. You see, I looked at all this evidence, and I talked about the resurrection, and I said, well, what's the best case scenario? But you see, the whole time I'm assuming that they're using their intellect to the glory of God, but they're not. And they are corrupt sinners. You got to remember that too. We are dealing with somebody who is a corrupt sinner, and they're not going to be using their logic to the glory of God.
Difference between inductive and deductive.
Yes, yeah, very, very much so. So now we talked about the basic framework of this. Now we're going to start putting this in action, okay? So the first thing that we're going to be talking about, now that we understand how to do this, or the basic structure of it, how does it look in action? So the first thing we're going to look at over the next 2 weeks is atheism and evolution. Those two go together, atheism and evolution. And after we get done with those next two, because that's kind of their worldview from the atheists. These two, they just go together. Because everything that they believe out of atheism comes as a result of an evolutionary belief system. So after we get done with the next 2 weeks, then we're going to get into some of the role playing. Okay, so I can maybe with you, Jason, maybe you'd probably be pretty good atheist. So, we'll do like a little 15 minutes or something like that. So you can be the atheist, and then I can kind of demonstrate how it's done, whatever, in a live action kind of situation. And then I'll be the atheist, and then I'll let you try to talk to me. And I'll use all the arguments that I've heard from atheists, and all the little quips and things like that, and we'll, so you can get some substance to this. So you can see how this kind of works. And I know you've dealt a lot with atheists as well, and read a lot online and things like that. So
Made my head explode.
yeah. So the first one is atheism, and the reason why I want to deal with atheists first is because obviously it's the furthest away from Christianity. Okay, so when we're dealing with Mormonism is pretty far away from Christianity, but of course they ape Christianity in certain ways. Islam apes Christianity in certain ways. All other religions with some type of deity are going to ape Christianity in some ways. But atheism is kind of the furthest away. And so we'll deal with the furthest away, and we'll kind of work closer and closer till we get something that really tries to pretend it's Christian, and then I'll show you how this system of apologetics works against somebody a little closer. Because a lot of times what happens is I'll show this with atheism, and people will kind of get it with atheism, but then they'll go, yeah, okay, I get it with atheism, but how does that work with a Mormon? How does that work with a Jehovah's Witness? How does that work with a Catholic or something like that? It works the same. It might be a little bit different, but it's going to work the same. Now, the importance of atheism and refuting atheism can't be underscored, because most of your objections to Christianity ultimately come out of disbelief in God. So you'll get somebody who will ridicule, say, like something like the resurrection, right? They'll ridicule the resurrection, but really they're atheists. There's really no problem with the resurrection if God exists. Somebody later on might not believe in it, they might believe in a God, but a lot of times they disbelieve in a resurrection, and they think the Bible's foolish, and they disbelieve in miracles and things like that. And the reason why is simply because they don't believe in God. But if God exists, then miracles aren't a problem. So we need to deal with atheism. I also find them to be the most vocal, and I also find them to be the most dishonest. They're full of rhetoric. If you listen to an atheist on debate online, the first thing they do is they come out swinging. And almost any atheist debate, they always come out, oh, I think the Bible is written by, a bunch of hypocritical people who are trying to suppress women. And it's really a lot of rhetoric without a lot of substance behind it.
In politics a lot of times too.
Yeah. If you want to explain that a little further, or what do you mean by that?
Well, the what's going on today.
Yeah.
So they may say, well, that was a patriarchal society, and so like you were saying, like keeping women down and various other things. So they'll be in tune a lot of times with the political flow,
right,
and rhetoric you hear out of the basic liberal camp.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll mix their worldview with the political leanings that are being espoused today.
A lot of it comes out of atheism. A lot of the homosexual agenda, the transsexual agenda, all of that stuff, a lot of it is rooted in atheism. If there's no God, then you can't tell me what to do or how to live my life or anything like that. Okay, so now remember what are the two things that we're looking for when we do an internal critique of a system? What are the two major things we're looking for? Inconsistency and arbitrariness. Okay, those are the two things you are going to look for. You're going to look for things that you're telling me this, but over here you're telling me something else. That's inconsistent. And what this is called is pressing the antithesis. You're going to find the inconsistency in their worldview, and you're going to hold their feet to the fire. Okay, that's ultimately where I go for with all of this. I don't memorize 25 facts about anything else. I don't memorize 110 facts about something. Normally, even with like cults and things like that, I'll memorize about 3 facts. About 3. I'll memorize 3 of them. Of course, I kind of remember more as I'm talking to them and stuff like that, because I'm not defending anything. I do defend stuff. I'm offensive. I'm saying, wait a minute, you just objected to Christianity because you said it was immoral, but you're telling me there's no God, so how can anything be immoral? Yeah. See, I'm not sitting there going, well, yeah, you must understand that,
Flicking the matches.
No, see what the atheist does, and they come right out of the gate and do this, is they strike the match and throw it at your feet, and the Christian stomps it out, and then he flags. He's not interested in whether or not you can answer that question. They're not. They're dishonest. They are not interested in whether or not you can legitimately answer that question. What they are interested in is just flicking the matches and watching you run around. I don't do that. When I'm dealing with an opponent of the Christian faith, I'm the one flicking the matches and throwing it on the ground. I'm the one, even if it's a kind of a bad argument or something, just to flick it out there, Anyway, I can't
take the bait.
Yeah, well, it gets them on the defensive. I'm not going to be the one who's defensive. And then arbitrariness, to pick something to believe just because you like it or just because that's what you want to believe. So arbitrariness and inconsistency, those are the two things that you have to get down in your brain that you're looking for. So what is atheism? Okay? What's atheism?
Well, on the gates is no God.
Right, yeah. It's the belief that there is no God. Now today, most atheists don't say that they don't believe there's no God. And the reason why is because
You have to be everywhere at one time.
you can't prove a universal negative, and they know this. You can't prove a universal negative. So for example, if I say to you, there is no gold in China, what do I have to know about China? Everything. I have to know everything about China. Or if I say there's never been any gold in China, I'd have to know everything about the past of China as well, okay? So when somebody says there's no God, they would literally have to know everything about the universe. Now, to say that there is gold in China, all you have to do is find one instant, right?
Mhm.
That's it. That's all you have to do is find one instant of there being gold. So atheists know this. They don't come right out. They say, yes, I am an atheist practically. I don't believe there's a God. But what they really mean is they don't find any good reason for God. And this is what they say when you're talking with atheists, especially the professional ones like Dan Barker and the Christopher Hitchens and things like that. People of that caliber, the Richard Dawkins, all those people who are atheists that are out there today, they don't say there is no God, but they say there's no God like there's no Santa Claus. That's what they'll tell you. There's no God like there's no Santa Claus. So you shouldn't, I don't know if there's a God and you don't know if there's a God. Now that's basically agnosticism. But they're more hard-boiled. There's soft-boiled and hard-boiled agnostic. A soft-boiled agnostic is, I don't know if there's a God, and who cares? Okay, who cares? A hard-boiled agnostic is I don't know that there's no God, and you don't know there's no God, and there's nothing you could say to change my mind. Okay, that's a hard-boiled agnostic, and that's really kind of what you're dealing with. So what they say is, it is most likely, this is the atheistic position, it is most likely that no God or gods exist. It is most likely that all there is, if no God exists, no spirits exist, then that the world is matter in motion. That's their belief. That's their fundamental belief system. That's their worldview in which everything springs out of. Motion acting upon matter. That's the atheistic worldview. There's motion acting upon matter. Now, one thing you have to look for right out of the gate, and they will try to do this. They will try to say atheism doesn't need to be defended because atheism doesn't claim anything. It's a non-belief. That's what they try to say. Mm-hmm. It's a non-belief. It's like, who was the guy who wrote the case against God? I forgot his name. George Smith? Was that his name? I think it was George Smith who wrote the case against God. And if you want to hear a really good radio dialogue, it was George Smith versus Greg Bonson, and Greg Bonson just beat him up for about an hour. Do you remember that one? Kind of.
Vaguely.
It was a radio dialogue. It wasn't a formal 15 minutes. It was just a kind of a back and forth kind of thing. But basically, he tried to say this, and they all try to say this. He tried to say it's like elfism. So they'll tell you like, well, I don't believe in elves, but I don't have anything to prove in believing in elves, right?
But it's so preposterous. Why would you believe it?
Well, yeah, why would you believe in an elf? But I don't have anything to prove in not believing in elves.
Right.
So it's not a positive worldview. It's a negative worldview, so I don't have to prove anything. Don't let them fool you into that. Okay, we're not dealing with something as simple as unicorns or elves. We are dealing with how the world got here. Where you go when you die, how you should live your life. That's a worldview. And they answer those questions out of the fact that they believe that the universe is ultimately matter in motion. If there's no God, if there's nothing immaterial, there's no soul, they're atheists, then the world is just matter in motion. But don't let them fool you into say this isn't a worldview, this is a non-worldview. Yeah, well, it's a non-worldview in which you attempt to answer how we got here, in which you attempt to answer how we should do ethics. So anytime I just listened to this and preparing for these lectures last week, it was a radio dialogue between Frank Turk and some internet atheist guy. And he immediately started saying, well, it's this, I don't have to prove anything. It's a non-belief, whatever. And then as soon as he had anything to say, he said, yeah, but, according to evolution, we should act this way. And this is why we do things. Mm-hmm. No, okay, as soon as you're putting something positive on the table, like evolution or like whatever, totalitarian ethics, whatever it is you're putting on the table, now they're defending something. Now they have something to defend, and now that's what I'm going to shoot at. That's what I'm going to shoot for. All right, so
So do atheists pretty much take the evolutionist type standpoint as far as how did it all begin? Are they all like big bangers?
I have not met an atheist who hasn't.
Okay, so then say where else would they say it
The only
started?
type of atheist that might not believe that is like a Buddhist or something, because Buddhism is technically atheistic.
Really?
Yes, it is. Which is we'll get to Buddhism actually in the course of what we're doing here. I'll have a whole lecture on what Buddhism is and then how we use this argument with it. But they're technically an atheistic religion. There's two types. There's Fariyama and Mahayama Buddhists, and one of them do believe in gods, and one of them are very atheistic. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, one of the things that they try to dismiss immediately off the bat is when if you start talking about God or creation or anything like that, is they'll just say, I've had one guy say that that's just God talk. He says that's like saying fairy and unicorns, and they immediately dismiss.
Mm-hmm.
They're just dismissal.
Yeah. Well, you got to let them not be prejudiced. You're saying why is that dismissal? I mean, that's kind of the question. I've heard that before. That's just fairy God.
God talk, they call it. This one older atheist I personally kind of debated and had discussions with.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I said, well, if that's the case, why are you even bothering talking to me?
They're the most vocal and evangelical out there.
Yeah.
That they are. So, all right, the three places that you're going to hit this worldview with when we're looking at arbitrariness and inconsistency is the atheistic. You're going to press them, and they have no basis for morality, existence, or the laws of logic. These are all presuppositions that they have. These are all on their worldview, but they're in conflict with their own worldview. Okay,
Right.
There's never been somebody who's an atheist who doesn't believe in morality. There's never been an atheist who didn't believe that they exist or that something got here, and there's never been an atheist who doesn't want to use the laws of logic to correspond with you, to fight with you. Okay. Now, of course, they're not going to come right out and say it. And so for instance, let's just talk about morality for a second on an atheistic worldview. Okay, so morality can't be justified on an atheistic worldview. We're not saying that they're not moral. We're saying, how do you justify morality on an atheistic worldview? If in fact, what you're saying about the world is that it's just matter in motion, and that we got here as a result of motion acting upon matter, and all these mistakes over and over again until we get to this point in evolutionary history, then if I want to beat somebody over the head to take their car, what is the problem with that ultimately? Now they're going to try to fill in that problem here in a second. I'll talk about some of their saving devices. Now, you have to look for that, okay? You have to look for that. It's not going to be so simple as a debate where you're debating the existence of God, and one person gets up and gives their 15 minutes, and the other person gets up and gives their 15 minutes, and you know what the subject is. Normally what it's going to be is they're going to be somebody sitting there talking like at a coffee shop, and they're going to, well, I don't believe God, and all this, horrible, stuff that's done in the name of religion, and that's where you're going to stop them. So, well, what's horrible about it? If there's no God, then what are you complaining about? Or, they'll tell you that, well, they're not sure God exists, but then they'll complain about something that, President Bush did in the war, or what, what the current president is doing now. They'll complain about something, and they'll complain about it as though they have a moral reason to complain about it. Now, the attempt is, and I'm not saying this is always wrong, the attempt is to argue the issue. okay, to argue the issue, whether or not we should be in this war or not in this war. Resist that temptation. Resist that temptation. That's not the issue, especially on their worldview. The issue is, how do you justify morality at all? Why shouldn't we be in any war? Why should we not? Why do you care about war or whatever? Somebody says, well, now occasionally you do have to jump into those things. So they'll say something like, well, I don't believe in God, but then they'll say like, but I believe a woman has the right to choose. Well, why do you believe a woman has the right to choose? Do you think it's immoral for somebody to make a woman carry to term? Oh yeah, that's immoral. Okay. Now I'm not saying there's not a place to talk about the sanctity of life, but in that situation, what you have to do is show them not why the baby's alive and all that stuff, but to show them that they don't have any reason to believe that if atheism's true. If atheism's true, then if I'm in charge, why not take women and chain them until they have babies? I mean, if I think that's right and you think that's wrong, why is it that what I've said is wrong and what you've said is right? How do you justify morality at all? Not just whatever issue it is, but how do you justify morality at all in this idea that life is just matter in motion? There's no God.
Stuff going on.
There's no God, right?
Whoever's in power, might makes right.
Right. And the best that they can give you is, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. You say, well, big deal. So this is the test case. I talked to atheists. I've done this before. I said, okay, there's this old lady over there, and I want her car. I want you to tell me why I shouldn't hit her over the head and take her car if I want it. Okay, now are they going to let you get away? Are they just going to say, oh, well, yeah, I'm an atheist and you're right? No, not often. They're going to throw out some saving devices. I've done this with atheists on a number of occasions. I say something like, okay, so why, on your worldview, why shouldn't I hit that lady in the head with a brick and take her car?
Because it's against the law.
Okay, so it's against the law, right? Okay, why should I follow the law?
Because if I don't, I'm going to cut my pleasurable experience in this world.
So, okay, so this is what they give you. They'll give you
I'll lose my freedom.
they'll give you a punishment justification for it, a punishment justification for it, which isn't all bad, okay? But now, if they say, okay, that's basically the idea, because if I get caught or whatever, so I say, oh, really? So you're telling me if I don't get caught, then is it okay? So if I don't get caught, yes, you're right, I would decrease my well, maybe. I mean, I can even argue that point.
Yeah.
I could say, well, maybe I want to go to jail.
Maybe I don't care.
Yeah, maybe you're homeless and you don't have any food to eat.
Right.
It'd be a great place to go.
And I just knock this lady over the head, and if not, if I take her car, and if I get caught, I get to go to jail. Now why is it wrong?
Then you get free health care.
Yeah. You see, they don't have a position as to justify themselves in this. So if you say, whatever they fit in here with this punishment model, which is pretty popular, either the government will or you'll feel bad, just if I can escape it. So if I can escape that, then whatever that is, then
Is it wrong then?
then is it wrong then, you see?
This is like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there.
Well, they normally get frustrated at that point, and they'll say something like, well, everybody knows it's wrong. And to that, you're going to answer, yes, I know everybody knows it's wrong. You know it's wrong too. I'm not asking you if you know it's wrong. I'm asking you to justify it given your worldview. I'm asking you to tell me, well, as a Christian, I know why it's wrong. If God exists and He created people in their image and He's instructed us to take care of those people and we're going to answer for Him, that's a great reason for not knocking people over the head. See, on my worldview, see, now I'm stepping onto my worldview, not answering a fool according to his folly, lest I be like him. I'm showing him from my worldview. There are great reasons for not knocking people over the head. But I want to know on your worldview, I'm not asking if you know it's wrong. You do know it's wrong. You know why you know it's wrong? It's because you're created in the image of God. And the image of God tells you that that's wrong.
Based on life experiences.
Well, I would just say an internal nature that God has given to you. But it's a corrupted internal nature now.
Right.
But I'm not asking you whether or not you know it's right or wrong. I'm asking you to, and this is the big key term, I'm asking you to justify it given your worldview. To justify it given your worldview. Why is it wrong? And you can fit anything, is it okay? And this is some of the things that people have talked about. That's an inconsistency one. Let's do an arbitrary one that Jeff Durbin does. And I've liked this one. Is it okay to kill your neighbor and eat them? To fillet them up and eat them? Is that okay? Well, no, it's not okay. Okay. So, and an atheist would say that's not okay as well. But you see, what I mean by arbitrary is picking something without a sufficient reason to pick it. So here's the inconsistency in which the arbitrary arises from. You're telling me as an atheist that we are a product of evolution. That certain things in our heritage went one way, and some people became deer, and some things became cows, and some things became dogs. And so why is it okay for me to kill the cow and eat it, but not kill a person and eat it? You've just been arbitrary. That's if you bar the fact that you're dealing with a vegan, okay? But why? If it's a vegan, okay, well, another subject, another lecture. But if they're not a vegan, if they just got done eating their steak before they came, or they're eating their bacon and eggs, it's like, well, why is it okay? You've just arbitrarily chosen that those forms of life are okay to kill and eat, but you've arbitrarily chosen that these other forms of life aren't okay to eat. Why is that? Why are you being arbitrary like that? Well, we know why, because you're created in the image of God. Now, let me take a little side note here on this morality thing, because I argue that not only do you have to have a God, but you have to have a Christian God in order for morality to exist, okay? So think with me for a moment, we'll get at the ultimate presupposition. In order for, and this is what we're all asking here, in order for ethics to be meaningful, there has, I'll give you the first one, okay? Because that's probably the most difficult one. There has to be justice, okay? There has to be justice. So to put it another way, why should I act just if there is no justice ultimately in the universe? If Hitler got away with it, he lived his life, he shot himself in the head, or he lived in Brazil. Was it Brazil or no?
Argentina.
Yeah, Argentina or whatever, until he died of old age. Whatever narrative you want to go with on that. If there's no justice ultimately in the universe, then there's no morality at all. There's no reason for morality. There's no reason for morality. There has to somewhere be justice. What we're saying is that there has to be somewhere where there's a payday. Okay? Otherwise, what's the point? As a Christian, again, I know why not to knock old ladies over their head and take their car. But in order for there to be justice, what does there have to be in order for there to be justice?
Law.
There has to be a lawgiver.
Okay, all right. Well, okay, so you go, yes, all true.
Rules.
So you go into a courtroom.
There has to be a judge.
Okay, there has to be a judge. That's what I'm looking for. All those things are true, but that wasn't what I'm looking for. So in order for justice to happen, there has to be a judge, right? So in order for morality and ethics to be meaningful, there has to be justice. In order for there to be justice, there has to be a judge. The universe, people do what's called reification. It's a logical fallacy. Well, they'll say like the universe corrected itself. No, the universe doesn't have a cognitive idea. It's just plain out there.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. People do this when they talk, my work called me. No, your work didn't call you. Okay, somebody from your work called you. Your work didn't, that's a fallacy called reification. Okay, so There has to be a judge. Now that we've got morality for exists, there has to be justice, there has to be a judge. Does that ensure justice? No. Why?
Because he has to have authority.
Okay, he has to have authority, or he has to have
Power.
what kind of judge? What if the judge?
He has to have knowledge.
Well, hang on. Well, just one thing at a time. What if the judge said, "All right, I judge the case. You're guilty. Bailiff, come get him." And the bailiff, this little weakling, doesn't have a gun. "You're coming with me, mister." You're like, "I'll knock him on his butt, right? I'll knock him on his butt." How much authority or power would this judge have to ensure? Remember, what we have to do is we have to ensure justice.
He has to have all power.
It has to be, yeah.
Could there be anything to ensure justice? Could there be anything in this world in the universe that could overthrow him?
No.
If there was one thing in the universe that could overthrow him, we couldn't be assured of justice, and then we couldn't be assured of morality. So how much authority or power would he have to have?
All power.
He'd have to have all power. Okay.
Ultimate power.
You'd have to have all power. Okay. Now, we have justice. We have a judge. And he's all powerful. Now, have we assured justice yet?
No,
Why?
because he could be a tyrant.
He could be a tyrant. What kind of a judge would this person have to be? What?
He'd have to be a just judge.
He would have to be, okay, and ultimate just judges in the universe, we're going to call them
Holy.
holy. Okay? So in order for there to be justice, there has to be an all-powerful and holy judge in order to make justice possible, in order to make morality possible. Now we've got power, and we've got a perfect judge. He's got all the power in the world. Nobody can overthrow him. Now he has to, and he's holy. Have we assured justice yet?
No,
What's the other element? What's the last element?
knowledge.
Knowledge, okay? So if he's all powerful and he's all holy, but he doesn't know the case entirely, you could not ensure this
He
justice,
could
right?
rule wrong.
He could rule
You
wrongly.
could make a
He
mistake.
could make a mistake.
Yep.
So, and
There
now,
can be no fallacy.
how much would he have to know?
Everything.
He'd have to know he'd have to be all-knowing. Okay, so in order for morality to exist, we'd have to ensure that there is justice somewhere. In order for justice to exist, the presupposition under that is that you have to have a judge who's all-powerful, holy, and all-knowing. And if you don't have an all-powerful, holy person, see, now I'm jumping on the Christian worldview and demonstrating why, in the Christian position, why morality makes sense. Do they have that here?
No.
No. It's just whoever gets in charge of whatever. And they will try to
What
use,
was right in their own eyes.
they will try to use the punishment argument, and if they try to use the punishment argument, you're just gonna, whatever it is that they put up there as a punishment argument, you're just gonna say, well, what if I escape that? Or, what if I like
Yeah,
that?
I'd say, what if that's not considered punishment?
What if I like that?
What if I'm a sadist?
Right,
Or a masochist?
yeah, what if I like that? See, then that's, they're gonna put you in jail. Well, what if I like being, well, that just sounds like a great idea. So, you've just convinced me I should hit old ladies over their head and take their car all the time, because I love going to jail. Yeah, you'd say that person's crazy, but what if they were crazy? So what? Now is it wrong? Okay, the other saving device that they will do is, can you think of another saving advice? So the punishment is one, and there's another saving device, and it's equality, okay? So they'll say things like, well, if everybody acted that way, it actually is a form of the punishment one, but if one person shouldn't act that way, everybody shouldn't act that way. Because otherwise, society would go to hell and all that stuff, whatever they would say. This is the stuff that they've come up with. Society would go to hell. So why did I draw a square here? Okay, so what they're basically saying is, this is a grass field here. And somebody puts up a sign, like, don't hit old ladies in the head. But in this illustration, it's like, don't walk on the grass. Don't walk on the grass. And if I said, well, why shouldn't I walk on the grass?
You kill it.
They said, well, look, if everybody walked on the grass, what would happen? See, I got a really good reason why we shouldn't walk on the grass, because if everybody walked on the grass, you wouldn't have good grass, right? That's a horrible thing, right? And if everybody killed old ladies to take their car, it'd just be pandemonium. So we got to have these laws. Well, first of all,
Survival of the species.
Check out lanes that go faster at Walmart.
right.
There'd be no little.
But they're saying it for survival of the species.
They
that
are.
We should do these things because it's for the good of us
Right.
as a species.
As a species. However, well, and even that you can argue.
Yes, you can.
Even that you can flip, because you could say, well, evolution got us here. So maybe me killing people is just going to be the next step in evolution.
Getting rid of the weak
Maybe
ones.
getting rid of the weak ones, and then maybe the people who don't hit it on their head, they're going to develop thicker skulls. They're going to become brick skull resistant after thousands of generations of getting hit on the head. See, so getting hit on the head's a good thing. Yeah.
What they're doing is they're relying on life's, things that happen in life for people to learn, and as evolution goes through, everybody learns not to do this, not to do that, and be a better person, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
That's what they're relying on. They're relying on what happens here,
Right. Yes.
through,
Yeah.
through
Right.
things that happen.
But they're assuming matter in motion,
Right.
which is not the case. Let's just grant that life would fall apart. That if we hit old lady, and let's grant that it's not good for evolution either. But why shouldn't I walk on the grass? You're telling me life will. Well, okay, if everybody walked on the grass, I agree.
Yeah,
We wouldn't
why
have
can't
grass.
A few of us do it.
But if just me, will the grass get ruined if one person walks on it? No. So look,
Maybe there's no
yeah. So if I'm going to be the exception to the rule, right? The grass. You're telling me that we shouldn't all walk on the grass because the grass will get ruined, and that's your reason.
And
But
nature shows us.
But if
exception
I
to
walk
rules.
on the grass isn't going to get ruined. Just one person. So what's the problem, right?
Right.
What's the problem with walking on the grass? With just me. And plus, even if I knock an old lady over the head and take her car, is everybody going to?
No.
Then it's only one little
Right.
old lady.
Right, one person can handle that. And then there's this whole thing about how you equate pain versus justice and that kind of thing. That I won't get into. It's its own theory of ethics. Okay, so morality, we kind of got that covered, right? Okay, morality. I'm going to jump to the laws of logic, and then maybe save the existence one for next week. But okay, so morality. So the matter and motion. Okay, that's their worldview. Is matter and motion. And on this worldview, they're going to try to have matter. They're going to try to have morality, but they're also going to try to have laws of logic, or kind of what is more commonly called reason. They're going to be reasonable with you. They're going to say, well, it's not reasonable that God exists. And this is where we start giving them the design argument and all these arguments for the reason of God. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say laws of logic make no sense on a worldview that's matter in motion. All the laws of logic are popping and fizzing going on in your head if what you're saying about reality is true. So you have a debate between a Christian and an atheist, and you're trying to figure out which one's more reasonable, right? That's what you're trying to figure out. So would it make any sense if I got like a can of Coke and a can of Dr. Pepper and I just poured them on the stage? I said, okay, which one's right? Well, none of them. Neither. It's just popping and fizzing. That's all that's happening in your head is popping and fizzing. If all we are is matter in motion, then where do the laws of logic come from? How do you have are the laws of logic material in nature?
No, they're immaterial.
Can you grab a law of logic?
No.
Can you accidentally walk out of the store with a law of logic? No, you can't. You can't walk out of the store with one. You can't. Are they in motion? Do they change?
No, because they're a law.
Because they change, then well, I just go over here where Christianity's true. See, it just changed over here, and you go over here where Christianity's not true. You see, so then there's no point in, unless they're consistent across the board, then they're not laws of, they're not laws at all. They don't make any sense. They're not conventions of man. They can't be conventions of society. The laws of logic are neither matter, nor are they in motion, nor do they change. But you're telling me that you're giving me a worldview in which all that exists is matter and motion. And then you're going to try to tell me that I've got good reasons to not be a Christian. No, reason doesn't exist on an atheistic worldview at all. Reason can't exist on an atheistic worldview.
The laws of logic transcend time and culture.
Yes, yeah. Like the law of, I don't know, the non-contradiction, the excluded middle, all these laws of logic, they can't exist on an atheistic worldview. What's happening in your head is popping and fizzing. And you didn't choose that. Okay, so I've got a plant here, and then I got a plant there. And one plant grows over that direction, one plant goes over that direction. Did that plant go, oh, I choose to grow over here? Or is it just a product of biology? It's a product of its environment, right? It's like, well, on this side of the room, the sun's closer over there, so I grow that way. On this side of the room, the sun's closer over there, so the light's closer over there. So it grows this matter acting upon motion. Well, what you're telling me is that I'm just being acted upon. So there was no reason for me to be a Christian or an atheist. There's no point in arguing, because you're just a popping and fizzing. That's all that's happening. You've got popping and fizzing in your head, and it tells you to be a Christian, and I've got popping and fizzing in my head and tells me to be an atheist. So why would you argue on an atheistic worldview? It makes no sense to argue at all. It's just matter in motion.
Because it doesn't matter.
Laws of logic are neither material in nature, nor do they change. They can't. And if they say they change, then, well, you just go to a place where they change for your position. So, but they don't believe that. They want to say, like, no, there are reasons why. And this is what the genius of Greg Bahnsen was, is when he debated Gordon Stein, he said, showing up for the debate, you lost the debate. Because by showing up for the debate, you presuppose that there was reason. But giving an atheistic worldview, how do you justify reason? How do you justify reason on matter, on a worldview that's only matter in motion? They're not conventions of man, nor are they changing, nor are they material. You can't choke on one, you can't walk out of a store with one, you can't buy one. Laws of math are the same way. Okay, anything immaterial really can't be justified on an atheistic worldview. All right, let's go with existence for a second. Something exists. And for there to be something exists, something has to somewhere have the power of existence within itself. Okay? That's the way it has to be. If there was a time when there was absolutely nothing, I mean really absolutely nothing, what would there be now?
Nothing.
Nothing. Why?
Because nothing.
You can't make something out of nothing.
Because, yeah, right.
Nothing can't make nothing.
Nothing can't make anything. It doesn't have any power. So you're telling me, okay, so now they're going to say, well, we don't believe that nothing existed. We believe that there was this singularity of a point of matter that exploded, that turned and all that stuff.
Right.
That this world is what exists. Okay, so they're gonna say that. They're gonna say that. Now at this point, that's when you're gonna start chopping down their arguments with some of these, what I would call the more traditional arguments, such as, okay, first of all, I agree that something always had to have existed. We call that God. Something has to have the power of existence within itself. However, in your worldview, does the universe that you live in demonstrate that it has the power of existence within itself? The answer is no.
No, because stars
wearing
die.
out.
It's right. It's wearing out.
Stars
We're running out.
die
It's
and-
the second law of thermodynamics. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you?
No, because it's like it doesn't, because stars die.
Right.
And if it could just sustain itself, nothing would die.
Yeah, but things die, and the whole universe is running out of usable energy. It goes to heat death, is what it's called. It goes to, everything's breaking down. Nothing's getting better. Everything's breaking down. So you're going to say, that didn't do it. If something has to exist forever, then this universe doesn't do it. You have to go somewhere besides the universe. Now, if I'm a Christian, then I have a real good reason for something existing forever. God has the power of existence within itself. But if there is no something that has the power of existence in itself, then you'd have to either say that sometime nothing existed or this has always existed. And this possibly cannot have always existed. Okay, we're running out of usable energy. I'm doing an internal critique, and I'm showing them why it is that this universe isn't something that has always existed within itself. All right. So there are more. There are laws of, people have put laws of science on this to show that the laws of science can't be justified in this. There are laws of mathematics that can't be justified in this. I'm not going to take you with all that, but basically these are the three that I use the most often. The two that I use most often are morality and laws of logic. Those are the two that I use most often. Morality, more out of the two, because morality is something everybody is going to complain about. They're all going to have some kind of moral complaint. And I'm just going to keep pushing them back on your worldview. How do you justify morality? On my worldview, I can tell you why. All right. Any questions about this? So this is why we do not believe in atheism.
I've never seen the morality argument from our worldview lose ever.
Yeah.
I've seen them go quiet and not answer and just kind of bow out the argument on the part about the judge. And one time, remember Wayne Talitha's father, he had me go down to the Juvie Hall out in Purgatory and do a Bible class. And so we got into that. And as I began to do the judge thing, all of a sudden this one gal, she's all, "You're talking about the God of the Bible." She got it.
Yeah.
I said, "You got it." I said, "The light just went on for you. You got it."
That's cool.
Right.
Yeah. I debated one guy and I led him down that path, and it wasn't me, but it was just argumentation. It shredded him up, made him look like a fool, because he was a malignant atheist.
Yeah.
All of the intelligent ones, they just began. It was kind of like when Jesus wrote in the sand. I'm not equating myself with Christ,
Right,
but,
right,
you know,
I get it.
but they were all leaving
Yeah.
the conversation. They got really quiet because they knew where I was taking this guy. And I basically, he ended up looking like a fool, big time. And that was totally Proverbs.
Yeah. Proverbs
Yeah.
14:1, the fools
But
said in their heart, there is no
But he
God.
was so malignant that he just insisted on going. I said, "Okay, we're gonna go."
Yeah.
But the other guys just. But I have had them say, you know, as far as the morality and life and I'd get them to the meaning of life. I said, "It really doesn't matter." I said, "When you tell your wife you love her," I said, "that's just a concept in your head, but it's just nothing more than just hormones and electrical impulses in your mind." I said, that's all it is, but there's nothing intrinsically value about what you say to her. I said, so when you tell her you love her, make sure that you preface that really this means nothing. I just wanna mate with you, and we've been together for so long, I'm just comfortable with you, but really love is nothing. And the guy basically said, "Yeah, life sucks."
Yeah.
That's
Well,
that.
and at that point, sometimes they get to that point, and you just got to say, well, you just got to speak into the microphone. Just let everybody know that your worldview is bankrupt. That's where it leaves you. These people are materialists, and basically anything immaterial. A lot of times they challenge you, like, well, I didn't see it. I didn't have and what you do to that is you always bring in, again, the inconsistency. Yeah, but you tell them you believe in a lot of stuff that you can't see.
Wind.
Well, yeah, but that's a scientific, you can see the effects of it. I'd say things like you believe in justice, you believe in equality, you believe in doing the right thing, you believe in, can you bring in a pound of love? Can you bring in a pound of justice? Can we look at that under the microscope? So no, so you're really not a materialist. You're somebody who believes that there are things that are immaterial, that do exist, like justice exists.
And then you
So-
show them how they live on our worldview.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they're borrowing from our worldview to
Basically,
make
yeah.
their worldview.
But who was it? Was it Van Til that said they sit in the lap of God for the benefits that he gives them, but he turns around and reaches up and slaps them in the face, basically.
Well, this is when he said atheism presupposes theism. So the child slaps the father in the face, but the child is at the whole time sitting in the lap of the father.
Mm-hmm.
He has to sit in the lap to reach the father.
Right.
So they're standing on it. And another analogy that's given to kind of summarize this is to summarize the inconsistency. It would be like, me saying, I'm not standing on the floor. I'm not standing on the floor. And then one person says, I'm standing on the floor. And so you look at what they're saying and you look at what they're standing on, and you realize there's an inconsistency in one and not an inconsistency in the other. So when somebody says, I'm an atheist, they're professing that, but their feet are on the floor of Christianity. Things like justice and love and morality and existence, things that can only be justified on a Christian worldview. So their feet are on the floor of Christianity, but they're professing not to be. And that's the inconsistency that you're going to be looking for. Any other comments or questions? I think we're good. All right, okay.